So we've been hearing about this whole Stargate project for a while, right? Earlier this year, they outlined, it was like a $500 billion, $500 billion plan to expand a bunch of AI data centers with partners including SoftBank and Oracle. And that saga has continued with sort of a lot of twists and turns and problems and big plans. And so I've pieced together a couple of different news stories about it, and I want to cruise through them together with all of us. So Stargate was initially conceived as a new company that would invest $500 billion in AI infrastructure. Now, OpenAI executives say the parameters have expanded to include data centers that were launched months before Stargate was announced. And OpenAI has been exploring some creative financing options, apparently. So all of that startup capital has not been enough. They're looking at potentially getting into some debt, which is interesting. And what I don't fully understand is the implications of this sentence. OpenAI will pursue different creative financing options, some of which have only emerged within the last year to secure chips for the data centers, that their executive said. On Tuesday, Sam Altman put out this blog post where he outlined sort of their biggest ambition, which was to grow a gigawatt of compute a week, ultimately. I'm going to skip a lot of the sort of bloviating that goes on in here and just try and hit these two paragraphs that I think are most pertinent to the rest of this discussion, where Sam says, if AI stays on the trajectory that we think it will, then amazing things will be possible. Maybe with 10 gigawatts of compute, AI can figure out how to cure cancer. Or with 10 gigawatts of compute, AI can figure out how to provide customized tutoring to every student on Earth. If we are limited by compute, we'll have to choose which one to prioritize. No one wants to make that choice, so let's go build. So that is a little bit of bloviating, but I think it really illuminates where his mindset is. They're really all in on the scaling right now. And he says, our vision is simple. We want to create a factory that can produce a gigawatt of new AI infrastructure every week. The execution of this will be extremely difficult. It will take us years to get to this milestone, and it will require innovation at every level of the stack, from chips to power to building to robotics. But we've been hard at work on this and believe it is possible. In our opinion, it will be the coolest and most important infrastructure project ever. So very lofty goals, very lofty amounts of money changing hands in all of this. And now we've had a little bit of movement. So we mentioned that they were feeling the pressure, talking about exploring some financing options. On Tuesday, same day that letter came out, OpenAI, Oracle, and SoftBank unveiled plans for 5 new U.S. AI data centers for Stargate, including 3 sites with Oracle, 2 affiliated with SoftBank, and an expansion of a big Oracle site in Abilene, Texas. Abilene? I'm not super familiar with how to pronounce that. Abilene was the flagship Stargate project. It's been under construction for more than a year. So OpenAI is in a position now where they need to execute on these lofty ideals and try and get these data centers built. And the article goes into sort of this new partnership with NVIDIA, which I feel like every episode we talk about someone's new partnership with NVIDIA, so I feel a little bit like I'm going crazy. But I'll just read here. This is from Reuters. After announcing Stargate in January, OpenAI held hundreds of meetings across North America with potential partners that could provide land, power, and other resources. It was a flood of people, one executive said. The expanded Stargate plan now includes self-built data centers and third-party cloud capacity. The new NVIDIA deal, which I have more details to share about the NVIDIA deal specifically, is part of this broader strategy that allows OpenAI to pay for its chips over time rather than purchasing them outright. They say of the roughly $50 billion estimated for a new data center, so like each new data center, about $15 billion of that covers land, buildings, and standard equipment. Financing the GPU chips is more challenging due to shortages and uncertainty over the life of the chips in this sort of current state of the industry. And then NVIDIA and OpenAI have formed sort of this new partnership. NVIDIA released a letter of intent, which I guess we can look at first, and then I have an article from Fortune that goes a little bit more into detail about the sort of how much power all this is going to be sucking down.
Right.
The NVIDIA letter of intent reads as follows. They said, OpenAI and NVIDIA today announced a letter of intent for a landmark strategic partnership to deploy at least 10 gigawatts of NVIDIA systems for OpenAI's next-generation AI infrastructure to train and run their next generation of models, blah, 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 trying to get super intelligent. To support this deployment, including data center and power capacity, NVIDIA intends to invest up to $100 billion in OpenAI as the new NVIDIA systems are deployed. This first phase is targeted to come online in the second half of 2026 using the NVIDIA Vera Rubin platform. And they go on to just sort of talk about how they've worked together and all this stuff that they're going to do.
Right.
But all of what I've said is just sort of context to talk about this Fortune article, which was my entry point into all this and kind of ties it into a single thread. This article is titled, Sam Altman's AI empire will devour as much power as New York City and San Diego combined. Experts say it's scary. And it is going to be a lot of power. They start with some world building, talking about how the heat wave in San Diego shot demand past 5,000 megawatts, and then how that is half of the 10 gigawatts that we are talking about with these figures here. Andrew Chen, whose name I may be butchering, and I'm so sorry, Andrew, a professor of computer science at the University of Chicago, said, quote, "I've been a computer scientist for 40 years, and for most of that time, computing was the tiniest piece of our economy's power use. Now it's becoming a large share of what the whole economy consumes. It's scary because now computing could be 10 or 12% of the world's power by 2030. We're coming to some seminal moments for how we think about AI and its impact on society." And they mentioned this week OpenAI announced a plan with NVIDIA to build data centers consuming up to 10 gigawatts of power, with additional projects totaling 17 gigawatts already in motion. They say that's roughly equivalent to powering New York City, which uses 10 gigawatts in the summer, and San Diego during the intense heat wave of 2024 when more than 5 gigawatts were used. Or, as one expert put it, it's close to the total electricity demand of Switzerland and Portugal combined. So this is the kind of stuff when we talk about power use where we are looking at some pretty significant numbers.
Yeah.
Because as it stands, data centers are a single-digit percentage of power use overall.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that like Sam Altman and all of the folks that run these big frontier model companies have been talking about for a couple of years now, is like the immense data needs, and because the data needs the power. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the immense power needs is what I meant to say. One of the things that made a lot of headlines a couple of years ago was Sam Altman saying something that they would need about $7 trillion to do the infrastructure that would be needed to continue these training runs to get more and more intelligence over time as scaling needs to increase. Now, he wasn't necessarily talking about like raising $7 million for OpenAI like a lot of people thought, but he was just kind of projecting like the scale of what would be needed in order to build that power infrastructure. Really to get AI where it needs to go. And I think that there's a lot of focus on this. Now, one of the things you mentioned early on was Sam talking about maybe some creative financing for this. I think we're seeing that with like the NVIDIA deal, right? Because now NVIDIA is quote unquote investing $100 billion, which means kind of that they're moving dollar signs around on pieces of paper when it comes to how they supply the chips. I think also, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was curious if you could expound more on that, because that is something that I don't really understand. So NVIDIA's quote unquote investing $100 billion. Is that basically saying we'll give you $100 billion worth of chips in thinking that you'll pay out over time?
Or they're giving them $100 billion and then Sam takes some of that chunk and gives it back to NVIDIA to purchase the chips. So it's like getting a, mortgage essentially,
or an allowance,
reverse mortgage or something. Yeah. We're going to give you this and then you're going to pay us back a little bit so that we can give you this other thing. And it like totally perpetuates that cycle. Mm-hmm. I have also seen a lot of the other AI companies are really interested like in trying to decouple from NVIDIA, because NVIDIA is the sticking point, right? Everybody needs NVIDIA chips. And so Amazon and Anthropic and others are like saying, can we build our own chips that do inference? And I think there's going to be more and more of that, because if you can build your own chips, then you can optimize for the type of inference that you need. You can also potentially optimize for the power consumption levels that you can work with. And you can use those limitations around like exactly what you're trying to build. So you're not using a general purpose GPU for something that's more specialized. You're creating the specialized purpose thing that you want that can be optimized across the different levels that are going to make sense.
And it makes sense too to not be entirely reliant upon one single base layer of any kind,
Yeah. Yep.
This is all built atop NVIDIA's hardware right now, and that makes NVIDIA, they're selling shovels in a gold rush. Like, I have not really seen too much on the front of what other chip providers are out there, though, because no one can match that scale yet.
No one can match that scale. There is another company that does AI inference chips, and they're called Grok. This is not Elon Musk's Grok.
Oh, no.
This is GROQ, and they were around before Elon Musk's Grok AI was around, and so there's been back and forth on that because it causes a lot of confusion. But they do really, really fast inference chips and have a decent ecosystem. But then any company that's large enough, somebody like Amazon, somebody like Anthropic, somebody even like OpenAI, could just build their own chips if they wanted to. That's like why when you buy an Apple device, you have a device with Apple silicon in it, not Intel or not AMD,
right?
Because they want to build the chip that's going to optimize for the way that they want that device to function.
Right. No, that makes sense. I just noticed that the time has ticked a bit past. I want to make sure we hit this last bit.
Sure.
Chips aside, NVIDIA obviously working real close to the OpenAI here. Aside from chips, the power itself has got to come from somewhere, and our grid does not have that kind of capacity. And so this article goes into, and of course we will link all of these in the description and the show notes. It goes into how Altman's favorite source of power is nuclear, and that is a very sensible one in terms of how much power you can get out of nuclear, and it's fairly clean energy. However, they take so long to bring online; it's pretty unrealistic. Sam Altman has backed both fission and fusion startups, betting that only reactors can provide the kind of steady, concentrated output needed to keep AI's insatiable demand fed. But Shin, the computer scientist we were quoting earlier, is blunt about the limits, saying, quote, "As far as I know, the amount of nuclear power that could be brought on the grid before 2030 is less than a gigawatt." So when you hear 17 gigawatts, the numbers just don't match up. So it would likely come from a mix of renewables, wind, solar, and then natural gas, coal, and other things like that. And the environmental costs of this are also really large. Chien goes on to say, "We have to face the reality that the companies promised they'd be clean and net zero, and in the face of AI growth, they probably can't be." He added that we need a broader societal conversation about the looming environmental costs of using that much electricity for AI. Beyond carbon emissions, he pointed to hidden strains on water supplies, biodiversity, and local communities near massive data centers. Cooling alone, he noted, can consume vast amounts of fresh water in regions already facing scarcity. And because the hardware is churning so quickly, with NVIDIA processors rolling out every year, old chips are constantly discarded, creating waste streams laced with toxic chemicals. "They told us these data centers were going to be clean and green," Sheehan says, "but in the face of AI growth, I don't think they can be. Now is the time to hold their feet to the fire." And so there's been a lot of discourse around power, and we've talked about how the individual's inference use of power is not that extreme, and we have that data from Gemini, which is at a big scale. But when you are pursuing this level of expansion and hyperscaling in pursuit of superintelligence, this is where we're really talking about excessive use of power and water and things like that. Because this is a lot. This is a massive infrastructure project with a lot of downstream implications, both literally and no pun intendedly.
Yeah, exactly. And the funny thing on this is everybody realizes that they're power constrained. And so even, regardless of what you think about Elon Musk, he's always been about clean power. That's one of the things that made him and his companies so popular back before he got way political, was that he was on a mission to do things that were really clean. And that's the Tesla automobile. And a lot of the popularity of that came out of that. He was forever saying that the data center in Memphis, I believe, that they were building was going to be all clean energy. And they've gotten to the point in these last training runs where they've essentially been shoveling coal into stoves. And you hear him talking about it, it's that's a suboptimal result. But it's what it shows is that at the end of all of these types of decisions is some kind of compromise of a core principle. And I think we see that probably in every technological revolution, but we're seeing it real time right here with people saying, I want to do this, I will never cross this line, and then they put their toe across it. And you wonder what the next thing is after that.
And it really seems to be entirely in pursuit of scale, in pursuit of hyperintelligence or superintelligence. They really think that scaling up all the way will get to this super beyond human intelligence level AI. And I mean, from the people we've talked to and from the things we've read, I have a hard time feeling like that's a sure bet,
Yeah, I don't know that anybody's a sure bet on it, but they think that it's likely enough that you'll get to some higher than most humans on Earth level intelligence that can be spread across several different domains. And then once you solve for that, then you can get self-learning in it. You can also, the hope behind all that is once you get to that level of intelligence, then it will help solve the power crisis and say, oh, here's what you should be doing, and to solve health crises and bring in this age of plenty and abundance for everybody and good health. And so for them, the ends justifies the means. As you run up, you spend as much money as you can. You cause a lot of unintended harm while you're along the way, because the thing at that point, once we get there, will pay for itself, and there'll be so much immense good that flows from it. It is a hope and a dream.
It's a bit of counting your eggs before they hatch, or counting your chickens before they hatch sort of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't want to be like a cynical shooter downer. I want to be like excited about tech, but this just doesn't seem good overall for the world. Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It seems like, for me, it just comes down to the fact that you have really, really smart people that seem to be compromising all the time because they believe they believe in and have bought into the vision, or they've been pushed into the vision somehow. And so they're on that path kind of sometimes despite the fact that they realize they've kind of stepped over the body of their past self.
Yeah. Oh, and we'll get into that a little bit in our third segment when we talk about XAI suing everyone, because some of the things they're suing them for, there's kind of an irony with that and what you just said. But that's coming up a fair bit later. Our next segment, we're talking about something completely different. What's coming up, Perry? Is this something with toys?
It is coming up with toys, AI-powered toys. What could go wrong?
Oh, boy. Stick around for that.